All right, let's get started here. Exciting times.
A problem of ethics and welfare in the design of randomized experiments. So the motivation is very simple. That is needless to explain to this crowd, but now it's the sort of the golden age of RCT or A/B tests, right? That RCT is a social standard of evidence, not just in economics, but also in the whole society, I would say. Then if we look at the real-world implementation of these RCTs, then we are going to immediately notice a couple of very striking features. First of all, these RCTs involve a really big number of individuals as experimental subjects. So I'm going to be specific about a couple of numbers, but looks like hundreds of millions of individuals participate into some RCTs in recent years. Then for such a large population of experimental subjects, many of these RCTs randomize very high-stakes experimental treatments. Say, think about some medical clinical trial where the treatment is a cancer drug or a new HIV prevention drug. These things are literally life-threatening. And now so we are seeing an inflow of lots of RCTs about COVID-19 vaccines as well. Then even in social and economic domains, many RCTs allocate critical treatments such as basic income and health insurance, police patrol, and so on and so on. Then these 2 points jointly mean that what's happening in RCTs influences the lives of numerous individuals. So given this high-stakes nature, what I'm going to try to do today is to provide a design of a randomized experiment that can improve the welfare of participating experimental subjects while producing enough experimental information to do causal inference and impact evaluation. More specifically, I'm going to use a microeconomic model or a mechanism design framework to derive a Pareto optimal stratified experiment, so to speak, with the following 3 features. So first of all, my proposed design has a welfare optimality property in the sense that it creates a Pareto efficient allocation of treatment assignment probabilities, where the experimenter assigns each treatment to subjects predicted to experience better treatment effects or to subjects with stronger preferences for that treatment. For the second preference aspect of subject welfare, the proposed design has also incentive compatibility. That is, it provides subjects with simple incentives to tell the truth about what kind of treatments they really want. Finally, since this is an experimental design, it also should allow the experimenter to estimate or unbiasedly estimate the key causal effects that are usually estimated with data from an RCT. And the proposed design indeed has such a good information property. So I'm going to propose an experimental design with the 3 features, welfare, incentive, and information. Then after developing such an experimental design as a purely theoretical concept, I'm going to also verify and quantify these properties through some empirical illustration. And my empirical analysis is going to be based on data coming from a water cleaning experiment done in Kenya in mid-2000. And through this empirical application, I'm going to find that the proposed design is indeed substantially better than RCTs in terms of these 3 properties. Specifically, it's possible to improve the predicted welfare of experimental subjects while producing almost the same treatment effect estimates with almost the same standard errors or precision. So this project is a mix of some methodological development and an empirical illustration. And it's clearly mission impossible to explain all of these points in 25 minutes. So I'm going to mainly focus on the sort of the conceptual side of this experimental design and provide only a brief summary of the empirical result. Then before jumping into the analysis, let me spend just 1 minute into explaining, why this problem is important and interesting. That is, why should we care about subject welfare? So my answer to this question consists of 2 simple facts. So fact number 1, RCTs enroll hundreds of millions of individuals as experimental subjects. So to be precise, I computed the number of patients who participated into some medical clinical trials from 2007 to 2017 based on WHO's clinical trial registry. Then this analysis or exercise shows that, okay, the total number of clinical trial participants was over 360 million during this decade, okay, which is even larger than the entire US population. And I did the same computation for social and economic RCTs as well, based on the AEA's registry. Then the number turns out to be order of magnitude smaller, but still more than 22 million individuals and households participated into economic experiments. So it's probably fair to say that hundreds of millions of individuals and maybe billions of individuals if we include online A/B tests conducted by web companies and tech companies. Okay? This sort of massive number of individuals are participating in the RCT in recent years. Then for that sort of subject population, many of these RCTs create very high stakes resource allocations. And this high stakes nature is kind of obvious in the case of many medical clinical trials, right? That is, think about COVID-19 vaccine trials or this specific clinical trial where the treatment was a newly developed cholesterol lowering drug. And this drug was randomly assigned to over 4,000 heart disease patients. Then this drug turned out to be a miracle drug, so that the treatment effect on the 5-year mortality rate was more than 30% reduction compared to the baseline level. So then from this single clinical trial alone, the lives and deaths of hundreds of individuals depends on how to design this clinical trial and who gets which treatment. Then this motivates me to think about the problem of welfare, okay, in the design of RCTs. Then I'm going to use the following stylized framework where we have a bunch of experimental subjects, I1 to IN, to be assigned to a bunch of experimental treatments from T0 to Tn. Okay? Then I assume that the experimenter has a couple of measurements about subjects' predicted welfare. A key measurement about subject welfare is probably some information about how effective each treatment is likely to be for different types of experimental subjects. And I'm going to use this ETI symbol to denote this predicted effect of each treatment T on each subject I. And these predicted effects are supposed to be coming from prior experiments or observational studies, as is sort of always done in medical and business domains. Then even conditional on these predicted effects as a first welfare measure, there is ample evidence that different subjects have different preferences, okay, about what kind of treatments they want. And to capture this preference aspect of subject welfare, I'm going to use this WIT to denote each subject I's willingness to pay, or WTP, for each treatment T. So W and E are going to be my sort of prior welfare measures. And I'm going to use this first treatment T0 to denote a control or placebo, okay, to be compared to other things. And let's normalize both E and W, okay, so that both E and W are 0 for this control. Okay, so everything is going to be measured relative to this control thing. Okay, so then that's the framework. And any question or clarification? Good. Then, given this, different experimental designs produce different treatment assignment probabilities. Okay? The benchmark experimental design is the usual RCT, okay, which assigns each subject to each treatment, okay, with some constant assignment probability denoted by this P super RCT. Okay? And I'm going to denote this PRCT as the ratio of each treatment T's pseudo or quasi-capacity CT relative to the total number of experimental subjects, N. Okay. Now from this expression alone, it should be clear that this RCT doesn't directly incorporate any information about willingness to pay W and the predicted effects E. So my first theoretical question is how to sort of incorporate this additional rich data about subject welfare, especially willingness to pay and predicted effects. And to answer this question, I'm going to develop and consider the following experimental design, which I'm going to call experiment as market, or in short, exam. So this exam is an application of microeconomics or market and mechanism design to this experimental design program. So at a high level, let's create a completely hypothetical centralized market economy in the experimental's computer. And in this market economy, commodities or goods to be allocated correspond to treatment assignment probabilities. And consumers correspond to experimental subjects. Then let's substitute the experimental's data into this economy to compute the resulting competitive market equilibrium allocation of treatment assignment probabilities. So my proposal is to use this competitive market equilibrium as a possible experimental design. More specifically, let's find any personalized price competitive market equilibrium, which is defined as a combination of feasible treatment assignment probabilities P star, as well as their prices pi with a few equilibrium restriction. So the formal definition is slightly complicated. So let me go through these pieces one by one. So first of all, this pi TE object, this red object, okay, is the price of 1 unit of assignment probability at treatment T, okay, for experimental subjects for whom the predicted effect of this treatment T is given by E. Here, so E is just some number or some potential level of treatment. Then I'm going to require this pi TE to be written as in this equation with some negative weight alpha on the predicted effect level. So the idea behind this negative weight alpha is that each treatment should be cheaper for experimental subjects who are more likely to be benefiting from this specific treatment T. Okay, some effectiveness-based price personalization or price discrimination going on. Then, given these personalized prices, each subject is going to solve a constraint utility maximization problem. Specifically, this P star IT, okay, is the probability that subject I is assigned to treatment T. Then for each subject I, I'm going to require the combination of the vector of treatment assignment probabilities to the solution to the utility maximization problem, okay, in the middle on the right-hand side. So in this utility maximization problem, okay, each person is trying to maximize the expected willingness to pay for assigned treatment, okay, but subjected to some budget constraint. And the budget constraint is formed by the personalized prices coming from the first step, as well as a common budget B, the blue object. And this blue object, the common budget, is picked by the experimenter at some sort of constant number, okay, which is the same for every subject. Then finally, I also require some innocuous capacity constraints. Okay. Then let's find any treatment assignment probabilities P star that satisfy all of these equilibrium conditions. Then for those who are sort of familiar to mechanism design, this is clearly a version or an extension of the very classic idea in economics and mechanism design, that is competitive market equilibrium from equal incomes, which has a very long history, at least since 1960s. And from the purely sort of economic or mechanism design perspective, this is the end of the story. But from the experimental design perspective, there remains some problem. That is, this assignment probability P star may be equal to 0 or 1, so that there will be no randomization anymore. So to deal with this problem, I'm going to add just one more modification to the previous definition. That is, starting from the P star thing on the last slide, let's modify it to what I denote by P star of epsilon. Okay, this orange object. This P star of epsilon, okay, it's just a mixture of the original P star, okay, and the RCT assignment probability, such that the resulting mix is always bounded between epsilon and 1 minus epsilon for every subject I and for every treatment T. And here, this epsilon is some design parameter, okay, picked by the experimenter as some small constant, such as 5%, maybe 10%. Okay, so given the experimenter's choice of this epsilon parameter, okay, let's compute this P star of epsilon object, which will be the final treatment assignment probability, okay, in this exam, okay, or experimenter's market. But if you are confused by this slightly messy definition, then you can take this P star of epsilon or exam as some black box algorithm that will compute assignment probabilities based on your data. But at the very least, I should convince you that this exam is not just a sort of crazy monster that comes from nowhere, but rather a natural extension of the usual RCT to think about. So to clarify this point, let's imagine a situation where the experimenter has no clue about willingness to pay or predicted effect. The very sort of classic scenario, okay, with no information, no additional sort of information about welfare. Then even in this scenario, it's still possible for the experimenter to implement the exam, right? Because the experimenter can simply sort of make both willingness to pay W and predicted effects E be the same and constant for everybody and every treatment. Then in this scenario with no welfare data, exam turns out to reduce to the usual RCT, in the sense that the two experimental design produce all the same assignment probability for everybody and every treatment. So therefore, this exam is a strict enrichment of RCT, developed to incorporate the additional information about willingness to pay and the predicted effect. Then in general, of course, there are millions of possible ways to incorporate the data about willingness to pay and the predicted effects. Then so why should we use this particular design of exam? So my preferred answer is that this exam has a particular welfare optimality property in the spirit of the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics. What I mean by that is that exam optimally randomly assigns each treatment to subjects with better predicted effects of that treatment, or to subjects with higher willingness to pay for that treatment. More precisely, for any feasible choice of the epsilon parameter, there always exists a combination of assignment probabilities that satisfies all of the exam conditions. So some equilibrium existence result. Then for any such assignment probabilities in exam, it is ex ante Pareto optimal in the following sense. That is, there is no alternative experimental design P without a star, with the same random assignment condition such that the alternative design, Pareto dominates exam in terms of these two welfare measures listed here. The expected willingness to pay for assigned treatment and the expected predicted effect of assigned treatment. So therefore, as long as the experimenter cares about these two things, the expected willingness to pay and the expected predicted effect, there is no alternative experimental design that is clearly better than exam from the ex ante perspective. So in this sense, exam has the good welfare optimality property. Then in this result, I take this willingness to pay data W as given and as representing the true preferences of experimental subjects, right? But in practice, these preferences and willingness to pay are, of course, private information, held by experimental subjects themselves. So therefore, in practice, the experimenter needs to ask experimental subjects to report their preferences about different types of treatments, right? And in this sort of preference reporting or willingness to pay reporting process, one concern is incentive compatibility. That is, whether subjects find it sort of optimal and makes sense to simply report the true willingness to pay to the experimenter. And the theoretical answer to this question turns out to be yes, in the sense that exam can be shown to be incentive compatible for willingness to pay reporting, at least for large enough experimental design problems. So it is almost always optimal for experimental subjects to report the true willingness to pay to the experimenter when experimental subjects are trying to maximize the private benefit coming from that willingness to pay reporting. So in this sense, exam is welfare optimal in an incentive compatible way. Then the final methodological question is probably what about information? Right? That is, since this is an experimental design, we'd like to use the resulting data coming from this exam experimental design to estimate treatment effects and policy effects. Then to provide an answer to this question, suppose that the experimenter cares about the causal effect of each treatment on some outcome yi. which is the observed outcome for each subject I. Okay? Then I use this usual yi of t symbol to denote subject i's potential outcome when subject I is hypothetically assigned to a particular treatment t. Okay? Then, of course, many of these potential outcomes are simply unobserved, so that the experimenter wants to estimate or learn a certain parameter of this unknown distribution of potential outcomes. And let's denote that parameter of interest by theta. Okay? One possible example of theta is the average treatment effect for this population of experimental subjects. Then finally, I'm going to use this WBIT to denote the indicator that subject I is assigned to treatment T. Okay? Now with these pieces of notation at hand, I'm going to say that this parameter theta is unbiasedly estimable with any given experimental design P, okay, if the following is true. That is, there is some estimator theta hat, okay, which is a function only of observed outcomes and observed treatment assignments, such that this estimator is unbiased for this parameter theta when the data generating process is given by this experimental design P. And it turns out that whenever some parameter theta, okay, is unbiasedly estimable with RCT, this same parameter is also unbiasedly estimable with exam with any positive choice of the epsilon parameter, at least for a wide class of parameters containing the average treatment effect and other important effects. So therefore, first observation is that exam is no worse than RCT in terms of the set of parameters unbiasedly estimable with each experimental design. Then one consequence of this result is that exam allows the experimenter to unbiasedly estimate the average treatment effect, right? Because the average treatment effect is known to be unbiasedly estimable with the usual RCT. Then why is it the case that exam can unbiasedly estimate the average treatment effect? The simplest possible answer is that at the end of the day, exam is just a particular stratified experiment, stratified on observable characteristics, especially the willingness to pay W and the predicted effects E. So in exam, okay, treatment assignment is not based on a coin toss, okay, but rather based on, okay, some utility maximization problem, right? But imagine that, say, I and Max share the same values of willingness to pay W and the predicted effects E. Then the two of us will face the same constraint utility maximization in exam, so that the two of us will get the same vector of treatment assignment probabilities at the end of the day, right? So therefore, as long as some sort of 2% of the resulting treatment assignment is going to be conditionally randomly assigned and conditionally independent from anything else. So therefore, by the classic propensity score logic, the same conditional independence holds, okay, conditional on the vector of treatment assignment probabilities or propensity score as well. Then this observation motivates, okay, a variety of possible estimators of the average treatment effect using exam data. So one possible way to go is just this one. That is, as a first step, let's focus on a subsample of experimental subjects, okay, who share the same value of the treatment assignment probabilities. Then let's regress the observed outcome yi on observed treatment assignments dit to get these coefficients beta pt's. And this beta pt is an unbiased estimator of the conditional average treatment effect of each treatment t on the final outcome for this subpopulation of individuals with a specific value of the treatment assignment probability. Then to move from these conditional average treatment effects to the unconditional and global average treatment effect, it only remains to take a particular weighted average of these coefficients. So for example, if we weight these beta PTs based on the population fraction of each subsample relative to the total number of experimental subjects n, then the resulting weighted average of beta PTs turns out to be an unbiased estimator for the average treatment effect. So by using this estimator or other similar estimators, it's possible to estimate the average treatment effect and other key treatment effects using exams data. Then this is a point about bias. And in the paper, I also provide some discussions about variance as well. And even in terms of variance, it is not necessarily the case that exam is worse than RCT. And in fact, so there are certain situations where exam's average treatment effect estimator is more precise than RCT's usual average treatment effect estimator. But in general, the variance comparison between exam and RCT remains ambiguous and remains to be an empirical question. So in the last sort of few, then in the empirical application, I use data from a water source protection experiment done in Kenya a little while ago. And this experiment, fits into my framework as follows. That is, experimental subjects are about 1,500 households in the original experimental sample who are randomly assigned to a binary treatment of the protection of the spring in use at the baseline versus no such protection. So here the protection means that means some cleaning up of unprotected springs on the left, into something like the right one. So the experimental NGO tried to sort of improve the quality of these springs or water sources, to avoid a bunch of bad outcomes such as childhood diarrhea. So as a primary outcome, I'm going to use the incidence of childhood diarrhea and the heterogeneous treatment effect of this treatment T1 on this diarrhea outcome corresponds to that E symbol in my model. Then on top of that, an additional sort of piece of data about household water source choices also allows me to estimate households' heterogeneous willingness to pay for this spring protection treatment. So I'm going to use this data to estimate both E and W, then use the estimates to implement exam and compare exam with RCT in terms of important properties. And here is a summary of my findings. So in terms of subject welfare, exam turns out to be substantially better than the RCT. For example, this is the distribution of the welfare measure, the willingness to pay welfare measure on the x-axis, while the y-axis is its cumulative density. And then this dotted blue line is the distribution of welfare and the RCT. Now, what happens if we switch from this to exam? The resulting new distribution is this red solid line. There is some first-order stochastic dominance improvement, and the average value indicated by the vertical line improves by about 90%. So exam seems as much welfare better than RCT. Then despite this welfare merit, exam's average treatment effect estimation turns out to be also as unbiased and as precise as RCT's average treatment effect estimation in this particular setting. So here, this blue distribution is the distribution of average treatment effect estimates under RCT. If we switch to exam, the resulting distribution of average treatment effect estimates is this red distribution, which is very similar to the original blue one, right? And the similarity between these two distributions, blue and red, shows the following 2 points. So first of all, both exam and RCT, have very little bias, and both of them allow almost unbiased estimation of the true treatment effect. On top of that, the two designs share very similar standard deviation or standard errors or variance in this average treatment effect estimation. So therefore, if we sort of summarize what I talked about, this experimental market or exam is a solution to the sort of following hybrid problem of mechanism design and experimental design. That is, we'd like to maximize the welfare of experimental subjects, but subject to the constraint that we need to provide as much information and as much incentives for truth telling as in RCT. Then the empirical results from this data about the Kenyan water source protection experiment is consistent with the theoretical results. So we can achieve some welfare improvement at almost no cost in terms of information and incentive. So I'd like to interpret this exam as a potential sort of modification or enrichment of RCT when the experimenter cares a lot about subject welfare. So the final point is that the general takeaway is that economic thinking could potentially contribute to facilitating the advancement and use of complex, adaptive, and other novel clinical trial designs, which is one of the performance goals set by the Food and Drug Administration for 2018 to 2022. And today's discussants have even sort of more clear contributions to this goal. So I'd like to engage in additional discussions about this general point in the Q&A section as well as the breakout room. Thank you so much.
So you just sounded sort of super exciting, and this terminology of this disruptive monetary policy also sounds exciting. But I think sort of this is kind of a fake, and I personally think sort of there's nothing really sort of super new or exciting in this disruptive monetary policy. I think that is sort of by the disruptive monetary policy, we sort of tend to mean sort of things like aggressively buying corporate assets and private assets, including illiquid ones like corporate bonds. But sort of these policy responses are not sort of really monetary policy in the traditional sense, and they are almost like just a version of fiscal policy. So in my sort of understanding, this disruptive monetary policy is just a politically easier version of fiscal policy responses to today's economic problems. Then why do we do that? The reason is simply because the monetary policy in the narrow sense is now almost completely ineffective. There's a strict lower bound on the nominal interest rate, so that there's not much room for monetary policy to play around with the economy. So in that sense, the disruptive monetary policy is not a disruption or innovation at all. And I think what we really need is a real disruption or innovation in monetary policy. For example, sort of allowing for real negative interest rates by digitalizing the fiat money, for example. So that's kind of my take about now.
Use Kayak's Explore tool to see just how far your budget can take you.
We really heard a lot there, didn't we? Hold on. Get rid of that commercial.
So one distortion I see is the impact of this monetary policy situation on inequality, I think. And so following up on what sort of Aya said, sort of the stock market is saturated sort of across the globe. So for example, sort of American universities like Harvard and Yale are running so huge hedge funds like tens of billions of dollars. But for them, sort of the stock market is no longer very attractive. So in the portfolio of Harvard Yale, now the US stock market is something like just 5% or something. And a much bigger category is a very sort of unconventional things like mountains and forests and so on. So the stock market is almost completely saturated. And the consequence of this saturated stock market is that certain industries and certain companies disproportionately benefit from this situation, which is partly created by monetary policy, I think. And a lot, sort of much of the inequality problem in the past 20 years in the US and some other countries is coming from this distortion in the stock market. And I think sort of not much has been done to sort of deal with these problems directly. So this sort of inequality effect of the stock market bubble is one big distortion I see in today's situation. So we are halfway through the discussion, so probably we should sort of start talking not only about the past and the present, but also the future, I think. And following up on sort of Jennifer's proposition that monetary policy will disappear, I think monetary policy will be obsolete if there will be no real sort of technological advance or real disruption in monetary policy. And among other things, so the one big technological constraint in monetary policy today is the hard lower bound constraint on the nominal interest rate. That is, the nominal interest rate is bounded by around zero, okay, due to some weird sort of historical reason. And why is there this constraint? The reason is mainly because the fiat money is issued in paper, in a physical form. And it's very hard to break this constraint with this paper fiat money. But we can break this constraint if we completely digitalize money and cash. And the Bank of Japan and many other central banks started talking about this possibility of trying to go to completely sort of digital monetary world. And I think this is one of the potential real disruptions in monetary policy. And once this sort of constraint will be obsolete, then monetary policy will no longer be obsolete.
So talk to me, what does that actually mean?
It means that you can set any interest rate between plus infinity and minus infinity. And it opens the sort of the door to a whole new possibility or set of options the central bank can take. So in the short run, sort of investors and direct sort of stockholders and employees and entrepreneurs around these industries in the short run, right? But in the medium to long run, sort of what I'm interested in is the sort of the trickle down effect on sort of players who are not originally in this game. That is, this sort of excess cash supply by the central government now sort of seduces lots of players outside of this specific industry. So for example, even in Japan, the University of Tokyo is now trying to issue sort of university bonds. And many of these sort of unconventional players are trying to enter this market to get sort of to benefit from this. So in the long run, I'm not very sure about the total effects and how the sort of this sort of entire benefit will be divided across different sectors. So, but I think the problem is very complicated now. No, in the age of the digital currencies, the power of central banks will likely to be bigger than today, simply because the spectrum of options for the bank will be larger. Then how to control them? I don't have a great answer as of now, and how to sort of control them sort of while maintaining the independence of the central bank. So that's something sort of we should discuss sort of in parallel to the design of sort of digital currencies, I think. So I don't have a very sort of specific proposal about that.
Thank you so much for having me. So today I'm going to talk about algorithm as experiment. So this is an econometric method project inspired by a variety of applied domains, including market design as a key application. So this is a joint work with Kohei Yata, who is a PhD student of mine, and he will be joining Wisconsin-Madison from this fall. Then the motivation for this project is very simple and very broad. That is, needless to explain to this crowd, but now it's sort of the golden age of decision-making algorithms, right? That is, computational algorithms in market design and many other fields such as machine learning are now producing more and more treatment decisions and recommendations in the real world. And here are just a few of the most fashionable applications of such decision-making or resource allocation algorithms. The point of this project is to take a specific econometric look at the surge of algorithmic decision-making. That is, I'm going to claim that these algorithmic treatment decisions and recommendations produce very high-quality natural experiments or instrumental variables that are useful for doing causal inference and improving the performance of these algorithms. That is, the central claim of this project is that algorithm is a natural experiment in a very broad sense. Then why is it the case that algorithm is a natural experiment? So let me start with very abstract and general intuition first. So assume that some algorithm is now running to make some decision or recommendation which I denote by Z. Okay. Then this algorithm makes this decision Z based on a bunch of input variables collected into a vector X. Then by definition or by construction, nothing else will directly influence the decision output Z other than these input variables in X, right? Because by construction or by definition, any algorithm is designed to use only a pre-specified set of input variables. Importantly, these other irrelevant variables include not just observable variables, but also any unobservable variables as well. Therefore, once we condition on X, that is, once we focus on situations or individuals with the same or similar values of X, then the decision output made by this algorithm is going to be statistically independent from anything else. In other words, this decision output Z is going to satisfy the conditional independence assumption the econometrician always wants to assume. So therefore, this decision output Z is going to work as a good instrumental variable for whatever final treatment we are interested in. The goal of this project, or the theoretical goal of this project, is to formalize and operationalize this intuition as a widely applicable treatment effect estimator. So our theoretical analysis is going to start with an identification analysis. Here, we are going to characterize exactly what causal effects we can identify when we have data generated by any given data generating algorithm. And we are going to provide an answer to this identification question for a broad class of algorithms containing both stochastic and deterministic algorithms. This identification analysis then clarifies that the data from almost every algorithm allows us to identify at least some causal effect. Then, in the main theoretical part, we are going to translate this identification insight into a specific estimator of a treatment effect. And we are going to formally prove that our treatment effect estimator is consistent and asymptotically normal for a well-defined causal effect, even in the presence of lots of heterogeneities in treatment effects. And our estimator is also easy to compute and straightforward to implement, even if the input vector x is high dimensional and the decision-making output is complex. So in general, the decision-making algorithm may contain some crazy components like deep learning or very complicated machine learning components. Even in that case, okay, the final treatment effect estimator can be made very simple. Okay, and the same point can be said, okay, even if the decision-making algorithm is a complex market design one, such as the deferred acceptance algorithm or the top trading cycles algorithm. A key special case of our estimator or our econometric method is a high-dimensional regression discontinuity design. That is, in the previous conceptual framework, okay, imagine that this input x, okay, contains a bunch of learning variables that jointly determine whether each person gets treated or not. Then this framework effectively nests a multi-dimensional extension of the regression discontinuity design with any number of learning variables contained in x, right? So therefore, our proposed estimator can be interpreted as a consistent and asymptotically normal estimator that can be applied to the high-dimensional RDD, or regression discontinuity design, with an arbitrary number of learning variables. Okay? Then after developing such a treatment effect estimator, I'm going to also talk about a bunch of applications and examples. And our framework is a fairly abstract one, so that it has many potential applications. So the first group of important applications is decision-making made by machine learning algorithms. And there are a variety of different types of machine learning algorithms, starting from naive, simple supervised machine learning to more sophisticated bandit and reinforcement learning type dynamic optimization algorithms. So no matter which specific algorithm is being used for making that decision-making, okay, the resulting data generated by such machine learning algorithms, okay, can be analyzed by using our method. Then on top of machine learning applications, there are many social and economic applications as well. The second group of applications, okay, is related to market design and centralized mechanism design. So I'm going to talk more about this point, but think about auction algorithms or matching and assignment algorithms. At a very high level, these market design algorithms are just particular examples of decision-making algorithms that use some observable information to make some decision or resource allocation, right? So in that sense, the data coming from market design can also be analyzed by using our data. And I'm going to talk about a particular application using data coming from the school choice matching mechanism, okay, as a first sort of application coming from a prior joint study of mine. Then the final group of applications is related to public policy eligibility rules. So think about, say, a particular policy domain like Medicaid in the US, okay, or many other similar policy domains with resource constraints. So in such policy domains, okay, the government often uses some algorithmic rule, okay, and observable characteristics of individuals or households to determine who are eligible for that policy, right? That is, whether a particular individual in the US is eligible for Medicaid or not is determined by a particular sort of rule or formula or algorithm, okay, applied to observable characteristics such as the income level and family composition and so on. Okay, then these policy eligibility rules can also be taught as decision-making algorithms. So therefore, the data coming from such policy eligibility rules are additional examples of our framework. And as a particular original applications in that spirit, I'm going to use our method to evaluate the effect of hospital relief funding distributed by the US government during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this policy distributed hundreds of billions of dollars, okay, to struggling hospitals to help their efforts to deal with COVID-19 patients. And the US government used some particular algorithmic funding eligibility rule so that the resulting data can be analyzed by our method. And we are going to use our method to find that this hospital relief funding probably had very limited or effectively no impacts on any hospital activities related to COVID-19, such as the number of COVID-19 patients accommodated by hospitals or the COVID-19 related mortality rate and so on. So our empirical bottom line is that probably this hospital relief funding made by the US government was close to a waste of money from the perspective of this particular policy. So I'm going to talk about both some theoretical development as well as empirical applications. But is there any comments or questions at this point? Great. So then let me jump into our framework. So our framework is a fairly simple econometric framework for estimating the causal effect of a particular treatment on outcome. So imagine that there are a bunch of individuals indexed by I, okay? So each individual I, okay, has a vector of fixed covariates denoted by xi, okay, which has p components. The support of this covariate vector, okay, is going to be denoted by this calligraphy x, okay? Then each individual I with these covariates xi is going to first receive some treatment recommendation, which I denote by zi, okay? For simplicity, this treatment recommendation zi is assumed to be binary, okay? Then the most crucial assumption made here is that this binary treatment recommendation is assumed to be made by some known algorithm, which I denote by this A, okay? Then this A is just an algorithm or function, okay, that maps each possible covariate value in this covariate space, okay, into the unit interval, okay? The interpretation here is that the output of this algorithm or the function A is the conditional probability of a treatment recommendation when individual I has a particular covariate vector value, okay? Then the important point is that this algorithm A, okay, may be either stochastic or deterministic. That is, the output of this function A may be either 0 or 1, so that this can be a deterministic function, okay? So this binary treatment recommendation Zi is assumed to be made by a known algorithm that may be either stochastic or deterministic. Then after that, each individual is going to receive a final treatment assignment, which I denote by Di, okay? Then if I use this Di of Z to denote the potential or hypothetical value of this treatment assignment, when individual I's treatment recommendation is fixed to a particular value, small z, okay, I can write this final treatment assignment in this way, which is familiar to those who know a lot about economics. Okay, then finally, each person is going to generate some outcome, which I denote by yi. Okay, and again, if I use this yi of d to denote the potential outcome, when individual I's treatment assignment is being fixed to a particular value, small d, then this observed outcome can be written in this way. That is, when individual I gets treated, okay, we are going to observe this y of 1. And when the individual I isn't treated, then the observed outcome is going to be this potential outcome, okay, without any treatment. Okay, then for those who are familiar with this kind of causal inference framework, this is a very standard framework of causal inference with instrumental variable and observable covariates. The only departure from the standard setting is this highlighted part. That is this treatment recommendation Z, okay, or the instrumental variable Z, okay, is being assumed to be made by a known algorithm. And this twist makes this setup interesting and tractable, as I'm going to show in the next 10 minutes. Okay, any questions about this model and the framework? That X is independent from DI. So X is assumed to be fixed and given. So in that sense, this X is a deterministic object so that it's independent from anything else. Another related point is that this Xi changes the distribution of this binary treatment recommendation Zi. And this Zi treatment recommendation may be systematically related to this treatment assignment. So in that sense, there is some sort of connection or link between Xi and Di.
Thank you.
Yes, great. Any other questions about the framework? Great. So then to make some progress, I need just a few regularity conditions or assumptions. The most crucial assumption or property, okay, is the following conditional independence property. That is, this algorithm A makes its treatment recommendation Zi only based on these observable characteristics or input variables Xi. So therefore, conditional on Xi, that is, among individuals with the same values of Xi, okay, whether each person gets treatment recommendation or not is independent from anything else. In particular, potential outcomes Y1 and Y0, and the potential treatment assignments D1 and D0. Okay, then I'm going to assume this conditional independence property throughout. And note that this conditional independence property, okay, is not really an assumption, but rather a true property or fact guaranteed by the construction of the algorithm in many applications. Then I also need to assume a few, okay, regularity conditions. The only substantive regularity condition is this first one. That is, this algorithm A, function A, must be continuous almost everywhere. So this may involve finitely many discontinuous points, but almost everywhere it must be continuous. Okay. Then only for this presentation, just for simplicity, we assume that this Xi vector contains only continuous components. And the paper extends the entire analysis to the case, okay, with discrete components Nx. But this continuous X makes the notation and the representation much simpler. Okay. So then to connect this framework, okay, to sort of something which you already know.
お疲れさんです。What do you guys think? There was so much going on in that, you know, I want to like listen, you know, I really want to give somebody the opportunity to, you know, to speak, right? And this is a professor, a very smart person, because 75% of what he was saying, I didn't understand. Like, now, I know he was saying algorithm, for example, but like, still, I don't know why he was talking about an algorithm, you know. So there, I mean, as you can see, there's so many notes that I took here that I don't even know where to begin. It's like, I mean, we can get to like some really fundamental science here if you guys want to get scientific about this, you know, like there was a lot. There was a lot of linguistic issues from this professor from Yale. And so, no, I'm not a professor at Yale or at any university. Long story short, I dropped out of grad school and did a bunch of kind of like real world research, if that makes any sense. But my gosh, he must be really smart. I mean, really, really smart, because that's like a level of forgiveness that I don't think you see in normal everyday situations. I mean, what's the word here? It's like kindness. It's like a willingness to just let him talk, I guess. I'm curious if Mr. Narita has ever received any feedback about this. One would assume that he has. But maybe not. Maybe not. So I don't know how deep I want to go with this video. I was just trying something new, you know what I mean? Because I noticed that people had been actually kind of looking up his English ability. And so I just wanted to check it out for myself. And here we are. And so, I don't know, like this is like next level smart talk, right? And it is good to see, you know, that a Japanese scientist is connecting with the world and, you know, sharing information. And I don't know, I assume that he's, you know, collaborating with a lot of other scientists, and I assume that he's doing good things, right? So, I mean, what's more important is the work, right? But there is, you know, kind of like the PR aspect of any message, and the optics, you know what I mean? And the optics of delivering a message, yeah, have to do with style, right? And so like I've seen other pictures of him, and he had the funny glasses, right? He had glasses that kind of look like this right here, right? Here, I can draw it for you. But he has glasses that look like that, right? Kind of like a iconic, yeah, right? Like it's like an iconic look, right? So that's like style. So he must be somewhat aware, self-aware of his image. But I don't know if he has any awareness of his English. And if he's doing it on purpose, I'd be interested to know the reasoning, the theory, or, you know, what he hopes to discover by not mimicking native speakers when he learns a second language. I'm very curious about that, because one of my core concepts that I have is that, you know, you got to mimic native speakers if you want to get better. So he seems to absolutely disregard anything that I've ever taught. And he's a professor at Yale. So that means that I guess you guys don't have to care about pronunciation, and then everything I'm saying is kind of wrong in a sense that like you don't need better pronunciation or an American accent to succeed, because obviously this guy is succeeding. And so I think you guys know about my theory. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but let me just share it, because like if you guys really want to, you know, speak English, you got to listen, right? Like you literally got to listen for like an hour or 2 hours. So, you know, in this video right here, this live stream right here, I'm listening with you guys. I mean, we're really just listening, right? But then the next step that you got to do is you got to mimic, right? And so if we're going to listen an hour to Professor Narita's English, I would say don't mimic him at all. Like, no, because I mean, the nature of the discussions were high level, scientific, statistical analysis, algorithmic parameters. I mean, pretty high level stuff. And I listen to a lot of YouTube about algorithms, AI, stuff like that, information, misinformation. So, you know, I'm not an idiot, but, you know, I can follow some kind of scientific dialogue if it's simple enough. But I didn't understand anything he said. And I mean, like scientifically, and then it's just it's more like, so it's already hard, right? It's already a difficult conversation. But then on top of it, like his just pronunciation and intonation make it difficult to listen to. So with the difficulty of the topic already at 100%, and then カタカナ英語でもう発音みたいなね、そういう発表して、it makes it like even more difficult, basically. Who benefits? What is the logical reasoning to continue with that speaking style? I mean, he's paid attention to his glasses, right? So, you know, he does exhibit signs of self-awareness, but the awareness to his presentation seems to be lacking. And perhaps, and this is, I'm just kind of making a theory as we go here, because these are kind of like first impressions. I have no idea who he is. I don't know how famous he is. I've never heard of him until today. I'm assuming he is a really smart guy. And I'm assuming because of that, people are very forgiving with him. But I still don't understand the reasoning or the rationality between, like, you know, like speaking with that thick of an accent and exhibiting zero signs of mimicking at all. So for me, as I do a lesson, and this is kind of like how I do my lessons. I don't know if you guys really realize, but, you know, this was just me, like, which way? Kind of just listening. And like, and he says these words over and over again, like theoretical, machine, hour, right? Like method. Like these are like daily words for him, right? Daily words. And he reads them as if he's in junior high school. So this is why, literally, this is why I have a live stream in a sense that like you can't really learn a language unless you listen, right? And so we just did that. But then step number 2 here is definitely mimic. And it's obvious, like clearly obvious that the Professor Narita does not mimic native speakers at all. And because then you go to the next step, which is to kind of like polish, right? To improve, make better. And like I said, we went through the like list of words here, and you know, he says these over and over. Like, for example, he kept, you know, saying like light when he was asking people. Instead of saying right, he said light, which, you know, is, he's basically, まあ日本語で考えるとそうでしょみたいなね。でもそうでしょじゃなくて、彼が光ってね、光どういうこと光って。あ、そうでしょ right? light? あれ、まあ発音ってそんな感じがするよね。まあ英語で考えるとね。なんで光、正しいか、そうでしょみたいな、そっか。みたいな、ね。ちょっとやり直すがあるよね。ネイティブスピーカーが聞いてると。ね。なんで光right って言いたかったよね。だから、自分の頭でずっとやり直してるよね。彼言ってることを。ね、どういうことアルゴリズムみたいな。で、さっき、なんだっけな。なんか、ドラッグみたいな。ドラッグって言ったのね。ほんまにね、ドラッグみたいな発音してたんだよね。ドラッグ。いや、なんだろう。もう怒ってないよ、別にね。でも、ちょっと腹立つって感じだよね。違うかって感じですね。まあだからこういうふうに、ちょっと、あれ作ったんですけれども、whiteboard here, I'm gonna whiteboard? 違うか draw with camera ちょっと待ってこっちに行くわ。じゃあこっちの方ね。そうだよね。だから例えばまあ基本的にね英語を知りたかったら、ね、知るね。なんか to know って感じ。アメリカ英語の母音ね、13個もありますね。で、この13個の母音、一応覚えた方がいいんじゃないの？これから英語使うんだったらさ、13しかないから、なんだろうね、13日間で2週間だけで覚えれるじゃないの？ね。13しかないからね。まあだからこう13個の母音あるのって誰も知らないでしょ。ね。だって英会話学校はこういうレッスンないからさ。じゃあ、これまあだからこのピンクのってね。って drug ね。drug って感じですね。もう絵本作りましょうか。ね。子供絵本って感じですね。だってまああれはね、本当にもう、成田先生は、あれ、幼稚園のあれにちょっと復習した方がいいと思うんですね。申し訳ない。それで、こちらの、違うか。こちらの、J っていう発音ですね。だって、どうじゃなくて、Japan と同じように、drug っていうのね。してんの？してる？そうですね。だから Japan の J でこう drug っていうのね。聞こえた？そうですね。だから drug。まあ R が難しいって分かってるんですけれども、それもまあ練習しましょうか。Right? それで、俺のあれに戻るんですけれども、これで polish になりますね。polish ってこれね。だからまあこうやってまあ発音しにくいもうドラッグみたいなね。じゃあ磨きましょうかね。drug ね。 a drug で、もうこういう一つの単語ね、こうやってね drug 10回100回でもいいんだけど、磨かないと上達しないよね。これで会話になって、相手に通じとるか通じてないっていうちょっとフィードバックをしないと上達しないよね。だからそれで会話になって誰かに言ってしまって、逆にその人の返事を聞くね。で返事を聞いて、ちょっとミミックのモノマネがありますよね。それで自分の言いたいことを磨いて、また会話になって、まあサークルオブライフって感じだけど、この磨くときはね、これ一人でやらないといけないですね。まあ誰かの目の前で練習したら恥ずかしいかもわからんけど、どっかの体育館とかさ、カラオケ館とかさ、こういうところで、練習してくださいって感じですね。磨いてくださいね。あと、まあ、ありすぎてな、すべてやるべきですかね。まあ、今のところ8人しか見てないんですけれども、よかったらね、だってこういう、基本的なレッスンって、成田先生にこんな幼稚園レベル英語のレッスンもあげないと彼が、わかんないんじゃない？わかんないけど、イェールの先生たちが、もう許してるんじゃない？みんな優しいからじゃないね。でも、言語学的に一応説明したいだけですね、海先輩は。ね、それだけだね。じゃあ、言語大好きな、後輩ね、手を挙げてくださいって感じですけれども。で、まあ、こちらのね、次の、これ楽しいっていうかさ、これ微妙に発音間違えると悪い言葉になるからさ、気をつけてくださいね。だって、この赤い A の発音しないとね、ね、fact ね。でもfact とかさ、そういう感じなんていうまあ微妙だからカタカナ英語でファクトって言ってねって感じですね。って感じですね。でもそういう発音するとまあちょっと悪い言葉に聞こえるからやんない方がいいよね。fact so fact って感じ聞こえた？だからまあよりもうこれは完全にだからね、fact. It's a fact. Don't want to get fucked. 違うか。So, こういう、まあ、幼稚園レベルレッスンなんですけれども、成田先生に、見せたいんですけれども、まあ、彼、忙しいでしょ。ね。じゃあ、もうありすぎて、今やるべきかなって感じですね。それか普通に動画作ろうかなと思ったんだけどね。でも終わんないじゃんって感じです。でも answer の方がちょっとね、あれ、まあだってこの動画が人気になんなかったらね、別に次、人気ある人の英語をちょっとレビューしたいと思うんだけどね。でも、これちょっと教えたいな。だって answer とか言ってたんだよね。その W の発音知ってたの、彼が。なんでかというと、多分英語を読んでるんじゃない？目から勉強したんじゃない？でも、実はこう W の発音しないの。ね。answer。まあ完全に R の発音になっちゃうんですけれども。ね。だって、answer。で、まあ、これね、こっちの E も発音しないで、もう answer。本当にそれですね。answer。どうしような。正直にね、甲斐先輩がこうやって学ラン着てって、もう高校の先生になった方がいいんじゃない？俺。 ね。それから中学校。問題はね、朝起きれないの。俺、無理。絶対無理ですね。でも、こういうレッスンって、全国の子供にちょっと見せたいと思うんだよね。まあ、幼稚園でもいいんだけど、まあ、普通の幼稚園が朝でしょ。それで、お昼の、まあ、午後みたいな3時とか、まあ、2時から6時みたいな間に、なんか、海先輩の幼稚園みたいな、ね。それ全然やってもいいんですけれどもね。まあ、ここでもね、まあ、でも、そうやな。でも、子供のあれやったらな、YouTube のルールがなんか厳しくなるよね。で、悪い言葉も言えないし、もう、すべてこう、アンパンマンみたいな、アップルみたいな、あれやんないといけないから、それ疲れるから、子供のチャンネルやりたくないんだけど、でも、一路鈴木から、すごい。鈴木さんは、I'm a big fan. Thanks for stopping by. かもしれないね。彼はビジュアル、そうですね。まあ、だからビジュアルラーナーとオーディオラーナーのあれが面白いよね。結局さ、まあ、ちょっと書いていいですか？これ、ちょっと待って。ビジュアルラーナーとオーディオラーナー、そういうありますね。でも、問題はね、これ、目だね。これって、なんだろうね。なんかね、100年見てもね、これ見えないよ。これ音だから。だからその実際の音聞いたことなかったらね、脳が理解できないんじゃない？聞いたことないから。ずっと見とるから。で、まあ、英語ネイティブの実際使ってる音と、その教育英語の英語が違うの。100% じゃないんだけど、結構違うよ。だからなんかまあ、オーディオラーナーとかビジュアルラーナーと区別ってね、まあ数学に関してそういう区別あり。歴史とかあり。そういうね、なんかを読んで情報をなんかインプットしてみたいなね。でも言語ってなんだろうね。水泳水泳って感じで水入んないで水泳勉強できるか。水入んないんだけど。でもこれ水泳でしょ。いや、でも水入んないみたいなね。同じように音波は無理。音波はいいや。この文字の方がいい。ね、これ分かりやすいですね。でももうこれ水泳ですね。なんか音で泳がないと全く意味なくない？なんかサーフィングをやってるからサーフィング見とるかって感じですね。だからこういうふうに言語に関してね、鈴木さんね。I'm a fan, by the way. ビジュアルはできへん。あかん。無理。音って耳しかない。100%。だから、もともと基本的に音の勉強しないと上達できまへんって感じ。だから俺、こんなビジュアルな、次元を作りましたよね。この、カラーシステムみたいなね。だから作ったんですね。ビジュアル的に、とか、区別できるようになるよね。だって、例えば、これは、いいや、この上にするわ。だって、これは何ですか？これは、アボカドね。だから、って感じだよね。それで、これは何ですか？これは、最低。これリンゴですね。Apple。 ね。そう。だから色を使ってビジュアルラーニングになって、なんか勉強になるんじゃない？アボカドって。で、こういう単語とかさ、例えばさ、これ、違う。これね。例えば、この単語、なんていう？おばさんって感じ？俺の訛りでは、これは、こちらですね。従来の文字でわかんないじゃん。それで、なんか人によって、aunt っていう人いるよ。緑の方ね。でも、俺の訛り、なんかアメリカの南から来たと思うんだよね。だって俺のお父さんのお父さんがそっちのオクラホマみたいなあの辺、テキサスの上だよね、出身はね。だから多分そのつながりがあるんじゃない？俺の口に。俺の訛りはaunt っていうのね。aunt もあり、aunt もあり。でも従来の文字だけ見ると区別できませんね。だからこちらのカラーシステムでちょっといろいろ説明、した方がわかりやすいんじゃない？違うか。だから本当に子供英会話のあれやった方がいいと思うよね。絵本的に。今っていうか、こちらの例えばこんな感じ。俺の絵があれなのね。下手なの。だからこういう風に、これは何ですかみたいなね。子供英会話的に、これは、そうだよね。アボカド。これで、絵本やからさ。アボカド。で、なんかアボカドの曲歌いながら、Avocado, avocado, 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 avocado. はい。で、avocado。美味しそう。Let's have some guacamole. 続きまして。And then, そうだよね。子供がいないから、なんだろうね。反応が、顔が見えないとわかんないもんね。子供が理解してるか理解していないかね。そう、だからこういうふうに自分の子供にこういうふうに教えるんじゃない？これ何ですか？そうですね。This is apple. だね。の音ですね。だってこれはじゃあ、now it looks funny because the red is in there. But here, and then we have Apple。A が下手なんですけれども、よろしくね。はい。で、こんな感じですね。Oh, wait, I can do one more because I've thought about this for a little bit. And one more. Just stop me if this is getting boring, guys. I think this one is a good one too. Right there. We come in with this one right here with the and we got love. Love. Look at that. That's love right there. Okay, so then, wow, I can point with, I can point with the black. Oh, come on, point with the black. Why did it do that? Okay, we're going to go back. I still haven't got used to my little thing here. There we go, black. And so, what was I going to do? Now that I got my black pen. Oh, yeah, we got and then right? So anyway, I swear my color system is really great for visual learners, right? Avocados from Mexico. Qué bueno. Me gusta avocados de México porque me gusta mucho guacamole. Y burritos y tacos. Tiene mucho sabroso. 違うか。俺のスペイン語がちょっと片言なんですけれどもね。でもスペイン語の勉強するんだったらね、聞いて モノマネして、踊れウで、磨いて、踊れウque ondasウそれで誰かと会話になって、また話聞いて、まあ、モノマネして、はい。なんかそんな感じですね。メキシコシティを楽しかったな。まあ、3ヶ月メキシコシティ住んでたからさ。で、そこで、まあ、メキシコのね、あれ、練習しよう、復習しようと思ったんだけど、思ったよりね、もう、すべて忘れたって感じ。俺のスペイン語。日本行く前に、ちょっとスペイン語の勉強してたからね。高校で。で、メキシコ、まあ、3回、5回ぐらい、なんだろう、行ってたからね。メキシコ国ね。カリフォルニアから近いからね。だからなんだろうね。練習してたのね。練習してたんですよ。実際誰かの本物の人間とね。だからメキシコの訛り聞いて真似してみたいな。頑張ってたんだけど、やっぱり忘れちゃうもんね。特に高校時代のレッスンとかさ。だからみんなどうですかね、英語のあれ忘れたって感じ忘れたっていうか、実際に基本の英語の勉強したことあるんですかって逆に。ね。こういう、だって色がわかんなかったらさ、まあビジュアル、俺カタカナ英語で言おうとしてるんですけれどもね。ビジュアル learner に難しいよね。あれがないとね。ビジュアルがないとね。でも、ビジュアルがなくても勉強って感じですね。だって聞かないとね。まあ、これで、なんだろうね。みんなに、あれがあるんですけれども、シェアしたいことがあるんですね。なんでかというと、I want you guys to like actually learn something. You know what I mean? Like, take for example, Professor Narita, and he seems like a really smart guy. I'm not gonna lie, he does. He really is, and he seems nice enough, right? But it seems like he never learned pronunciation at all. And, that's like fine, I guess. Because, like, you saw, he got to, I mean, he's a professor. だから、カタカナ英語でも大丈夫かいね、通じとるからええんちゃうかいう人いっぱいおるやろ。でもまあ、なんだろうね。こういうレベル高い話題わかる人はね、彼言ってることわかるかもわかりませんね。ただ、なんか言ってる情報がね、言ってることがね、インフォメーションが本当にもうわかんないよ。So maybe that's my problem, right? I just don't understand high level math. So anyway, so basically I'm going to share with you guys a little invitation because seriously, if you guys want to learn, click one of those links and then, what's the word? Like, deep work, I guess, like a workshop or whatever, because without your input, it's really hard for me to do like a review, you know what I mean? And so now that you've seen なんだっけ、成田先生の英語、君はね、そういう感じで英語で喋ってたらね、まあ成功できるよ。そういう可能性がありますね。でも、なんだろうね。彼は天才だからイェールで働いてると思うよね。彼の英語力がちょっとって感じだっ でも、天才だからって感じですね。なんだろうね。それでもう英語ネイティブの人を真似しないで成功できる人ってじゃあいますよね。完全に。でも一般人にはどうですかね。こんな喋り方でなんだろうね。レストランとかさ、って言って、はいってカフェとか行ってさ、どうだろうね。セールスの電話でね、こういう電話が来てって感じになっちゃうんですね。多分セールスならあんまりもうそのセールスの確率がそんな良くないんじゃない？もし成田さんがセールスマンだったらね、もしね、こういう英語のレベルで言いたいことわかるか？ I think, sometimes I think that I'm saying something, but then sometimes wait, maybe you guys don't understand. But,英語で言っちゃうとね、I for sure 100% can make sure that I'm saying that I know that you guys are listening, but seriously, 成田さんの英語はどうですかねって感じですね。それでいいんだったら、それでいいんだけど、君が成田さんと同じように英語で喋ってたらね、ぜひ、俺の3ステップ学習法をご覧くださいね。多分あれ、だって基本のあれだからね。俺と会話してもね、多分俺がそっからスタートすると思うよね。そのアメリカ英語の13個の母音教えたり、そのシーンのいろいろとかさ、基本って基本だからさ、違うか。俺だけか。基本的に言語は音だから音を知るべき。日本語だったらあいうえおって感じですね。で、そのあいうえおの上にもうさしすせそうさしすせそうみたいなたちつてとみたいなかきくけこがきくけこね。あいうえおしかないから日本語の母音5つの母音覚えとるって感じですね。君はプラス8頑張れ。でも実はプラス8じゃないよね。プラス5だよね。実は。だって A とか O とか言えるでしょ。ね。おいとかね。だからその5つ、日本語に入ってない母音は5つだけだよね。その5つ知らんかったら、ぜひどっかのリンククリックしてくださいね。基本のあれだからね。基本って幼稚園レベル英語ですね。俺言ってることってね。Apple、Avocado、Love って感じですね。それ区別できなかったらすごいと思うんだよね。それでイェールに。すごいよね。正直にね。で、これは彼の性格とか関係なくてね。もう言語だけですね。言語学的に俺言語学者的にこうやって他の言語、なんだっけサイエンティストで、忘れた。昨日フィロソファーの哲学、そうだよね。哲学だよね。ほら、思い出した。日本語錆びてますね、俺。だから哲学って哲学だよね。だから哲学の科学者。科学者か。はい。日本語錆びとるね、俺。すいませんね。でも、彼は科学者やから、みたいなね。イェールで働いてますね。俺、同じことを繰り返してるって感じやから、もうちょっとね、こちらの彼の、いや、もういいかな。ありすぎて、本当にありすぎて、こちらのね、ミスがね、だから、絵本作ろうかな。でもこういう感じだったよね。失敗が結構あったから、長い動画になりそうだよね。もう、こんな発音のミス多すぎてって感じですね。しかも、アルゴリズムとかさ、unobservable ね、もう結構ね、科学的な単語ですね。 でもゴールとかなんかまあそのままカタカナ英語やんって感じですね。すごいよね。で、method。まあこういうね、だからなんだあれ、文句じゃないよ。ただ、こういう英語の文句だね。これ。だって O からなんか method っていう発音するよね。だから it is method ね。で O が見えるんだけどね。So, Mao san, he's a scientist, I think, a professor that works at Yale, and he sounded like a scientist, so I'm going to assume he's a scientist, because to be honest, I didn't check. I just noticed that people were searching for his name, and so this is kind of the point, is that this video is my first impression of his speaking style without knowing anything about him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I saw like Yale or something because it said so in the video. So like I didn't do any research. I'm just giving you guys my like raw reaction to what I was listening to. And, you know, I gave like 30 minutes, 40 minutes or something. Like I really just listened, right? Because, you know, one of my theories, one of my theories, right, is you got to listen. So I gave him that, right? But the next thing, and I don't want to say judge, but this is just how you learn a second language. So you listen, you mimic. And Professor Narita did not mimic at all. It sounds like he has never spoken to a native speaker. However, I will say though, he did say gonna, ne? And so because he said gonna, I think he actually has obviously talked with people in English. And he picked up the gonna from real people, or he was like, oh no, I need to sound natural. What should I do to sound natural? And he read in a book that you say gonna, but nonetheless, his use of the word gonna was natural, and it sounded totally normal because that's how we say gonna. So yeah, but that's experience right there, gonna. And then here, I'm just going to make it smaller so I can color it. Remember, I got my kids book here. There we go. So yeah, ga, and then gonna. Anyway, so yeah, he obviously does have experience. He does talk to people. He travels the world. And his accent is really hard to understand. I'm used to it. I've heard this kind of accent for many years, so I can understand it, but I'm not going to lie, that is pretty hardcore katakana accent that I don't think should be encouraged just because I don't see the benefit for anybody. I don't see the logic. You know what I mean? So, 単純にへったりくそ。何それ？単純？くそって。I can read くそ。へったくそね。But 単純って読めないよね。漢字難しいですよ。KY って漢字読めない先輩です。違うか。そうね。でもそうですね。だからこれからね、みんなどうするかって英語の勉強ってこれぐらい片言でいいんだったらね。で、イェールの先生ね。じゃあ君もね、そういう風におしゃべりしたかったらどうぞって感じですね。でもif you wanna like, I don't know, talk like normal people, you have to like stop looking ね、こうやってね。だってメモしてもね、いいんだけどね、結局メモすると、なんかその音を覚えないといけないですね。だからこうやって method、なんか method、どうやってメモするかって、俺のから振り仮名の方が、分かりやすいと思うんですけれども、その音を覚えないと、全く意味ないですね。ね。だって俺、セリフ覚えてないですね。覚えてないっていうか、読んでない。ね。今、日本語で考えてると思うんですけれどもね。なんでかというと、俺の脳の中に、なんか、いろんな日本人の声が響いてるエコーしてるよね。聞こえる。いろんな言い方とか、お父さんとかさ、学校の先生の声とかさ、声の思い出があるから、こうやって今、喋ってますね。大丈夫ですね。でもそのメモとかさ、目で勉強してるから、君が混乱してるよ。そう。だから俺のいつも言うんですけれども、俺、言動の4つのギアですね。You gotta listen, then you gotta mimic, polish it, and the polishing part, like, that's what you gotta do by yourself, right? That's like when you play basketball, right? バスケね、なんかゲームとかやりたいんじゃないね。スタジアムでとかね、プロでね。でも、プロ行く前に、練習しないといけないですね。だからみんな同じように会話したいでしょう。ね。でも会話する前にちょっと練習した方がいいんじゃない？だから磨いてくださいね。自分の言い方とか、ね。発音ね。それで、自分のリスニングも磨ける。すごいね。日本語を錆びとるけど、磨くとか磨けるとかさ、一気になんだっけみたいなね、なんか焦っちゃったんだよね、一瞬だけ。でも覚え出しちゃって感じですね。磨いても、だから磨いてね、そういう練習したことあるんですよ。ね。磨いてたんですよ。昔。ね、磨いてたから、今、もう何年ぶり、なんか磨けるとか、そういうね、単語、今でも言えるよ。だから磨くって一人でやってくださいね。それで準備してパーフェクトじゃなくてもいいからとりあえず練習って感じですね。で誰かと会話して言ってみるって感じですね。磨いたフレーズがね通じるか通じないかっていうなんだっけエクスペリメントってなんだっけなんとか研ね研究って感じで、通じとる。通じとらん。じゃあ、もう一回、ね、聞いて、真似して、磨いて、言ってみるっていう、サイクルだよね。こういうね。こうすると、毎日ね、you're gonna get fluent, you're gonna get fluent in the, topic that you focus on. And even yesterday, I was talking to my student and we were just kind of talking about small talk and that's kind of boring, right? She was talking to her neighbors about small talk. I'm like, well, what do you want to talk about? And she was like, well, health. It's like, okay, well, now when you talk about health, there's only 5-10 key words to learn if you're talking about health, energy, nutrition. There's only a few. So it's like, why don't you start there? Start learning those words. Talk about those words. And then when you talk to somebody new, just straight up, what do you do for health? What's your health routine? Do you work out? What's your diet? I don't know. だって俺健康に関して今のところねそんな興味ないね俺もうごめんねお散歩だけで it's a long story, but like I got hit by a car like 2 years ago, and like I stopped going to the gym because like my back kind of hurts or whatever, and I'm going to the chiropractor now. See, I don't like talking about health because it's like 痛いなで、その痛さがめんどくさいよね。なんかうざいじゃん。この痛さに関して何にも考えたくないよね。普通に誰かと喋りたいね。自分のなんていう I can't say it in Japanese, so I'm just going to say it in English. And I don't recommend doing that, but it's just like, I don't want to I don't want to share that my shoulders hurt. That's, it's like my privacy or whatever. But anyway, in terms of health, there's only so many conversations you can have. So you might as well learn it, So anyway, it all just depends on what do you want to talk about. And like picking the topic, that makes this so much easier because you can listen to somebody talk about, I'll give you an example. No offense to Jami if he ever was listening, which I doubt he is, because he's busy playing Gran Turismo. And when he plays Gran Turismo, he talks about Gran Turismo. And so he kept saying this word that I was like, what is he talking about? Like a library? A library? But like apparently in Gran Turismo, they talk about their livery or something. Not livery, livery. I think that's the word. I don't even know because that's not my specialty. Livery? No, it's not that because the spell check kind of like corrects you. So I think, okay, maybe it was that word. I'm not even sure, but that's the whole point, is that he talks about racing on a video game, right? Gran Turismo. And so he probably listens to like other podcasters or YouTubers talk about the game, and then he starts talking like it, and he talks about it all the time. And so then, well, it's weird because like he should probably have a conversation with people that are interested in F1, right? But here I am listening going, oh, you know what? I don't care. Like this is, I mean, I do kinda, cause like you're my friend and I'm listening, but I don't have Gran Turismo, the game, and I'm not gonna buy like the wheel, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't care that much. So everybody's got to have this kind of like balance of like what kind of topics you're going to listen to. And so listening to Narita sensei was really, really hard, because that level of PhD science, well, I mean, that's why he's probably a professor, because he seems to understand complicated subjects. So we need him. But what about you? Like, how do you want to actually engage the world with your English ability? And if you have no reason to engage the world, then you have no reason to learn English. So I think it's really crucial to engage the world. And, this is kind of why I'm giving the live stream a shot right now, is because like as I was making videos, like, yeah, okay, like they're interesting. I think they're interesting, right? And like, 1 million people watch some of them. So it's like, cool, like I can make good videos if I try. I can make better videos if I try a little more. But it takes so much time. And to be honest, I don't really want to be editing videos all day. So I'm looking for a more fundamental way in which I could reach you and hopefully, connect with, somebody that's actually learning something. So I'm going to be learning more about live stream as I go, yoroshiku ne. But I also want to make sure that I'm doing content that's actually interesting to people. So, is this really, I mean, 幼稚園レベル英語なんですけれども、大学レベルも入ってますね。で、大学のね、アルゴリズム、これ高校生でもわかるはずだよね、アルゴリズムって。 なんだろうね。磨かないとね。でも結局聞かないと磨けないから、you gotta listen to somebody say it. So anyway, and then that's why like the video is so powerful if I just stop the video, because it's like, you know, this whole list of all of these words, it's like so many. And now for Mr. Narita, Professor Narita, this video would be just amazing if he was to listen to the whole thing, because he's getting personalized feedback for his specific English. Like this list of words is like 100% for Professor Narita. And if he actually takes note and actually listens, I'd be very happy, because I mean, there's just so much going on, right? So for example, if you say learning, né? So the avocado, right? And then let's say you then ignore the R and you say learning, it's hard to understand. And it's really a matter of, just learning the sounds. So we don't say the E and we don't say the A, right? You just ignore that. And then basically you just come in here with the R, because it's a strong R, and it's learning. And so you then literally listen, learning, mimic learning, and then polish learning, L-R, learning. Are we learning yet? And then use it to conversation, right? So this is how you do it. Literally, you listen, learning, then you mimic it, learning, and then polish it, you know, go for it. You know, get that la and the right? So learning. And then, hey, use it in a conversation. Are you learning yet? What are you learning? What are you learning with Kai Senpai? What are you learning? So listen, mimic. So what are you learning? Hey, listen, what are you learning? And have a conversation with somebody, right? Say, hey, what are you learning? What are you watching? What are you reading? It doesn't matter. Listen, mimic, polish. Migaite ne. Oh, what are you learning? Oh, I'm learning algorithms from Professor Narita. Oh, algorithms. Yeah, listen, algorithms. Algorithms. Polish it, right? Migaite ne. I mean, gosh, if we come back over here to the list of magic spells, we got the A, right? Here, you get the algorithm. So, then gore yori na. Watch this. Gur. もう無視して。O 発音しないで。Visual learners. Algorithm. ね、まあそこから難しいかもわからんけど、A っていう E じゃなくて A ね、ism。th も難しいですね。algorithm じゃなくて algorithm。で、こういうレッスンってね、ベロを出してね、って、これもう完全に幼稚園レベルのレッスンなんですけれどもね。まあ。大学の幼稚園レベルレッスンって感じだね、今。大学生の幼稚園。まあ。You guys see the irony in all this? So, anyway, oh wait, why did that erase? Whatever. But yeah, I love my color system. I really do. Abstract. Abstract. See, the A, abstract,じゃなくて. Okay, I'm going down the rabbit hole, obviously, but like I just love my system here so much. The abstract. And, to be honest, if I could just teach you guys like this way with like a live lesson, and then every day we have a new, listening video to listen to, that'd be cool. Not going to lie. 'Cause this way I can do all of this editing without, the post-production, you know what I mean? So I think it's kind of cool. And if you guys like it, I'm going to keep doing it. So, but yeah, this is actually just a big experiment for me, just to see if anybody was actually listening or not. And to be honest, there's like 16 of you now, which is like maybe double what it was earlier. So you know what I learned? I learned that 16 people will watch after maybe an hour of me doing a live stream, which is pretty cool, not going to lie. The only problem is that the time zone right now, like most of you should be at work or at school right now, and you're not, or you are, and you're listening to me instead. If that's the case, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But yeah, if you're not at work, you're not at school, it's like, what are you doing right now? I mean, I don't work until night, so like if it's morning and you guys are just like, maybe you work in the night or something, maybe you don't have a job, maybe, I don't know, like what's going on? What are you guys doing? Because like you're learning English with me, or are you guys like entertained by watching this kind of thing? I don't know. And that's like kind of like the bummer of like me being in California right now, is that like when I'm in Japan, I can kind of get a feeling of like, are you guys paying attention, or what you guys are watching, or how can I help, right? But when I'm here in California, like I don't get that daily feedback. Because when I'm in Japan, you guys recognize me every day. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm just saying that it's very beneficial for me to be in Japan, because like you literally see me like on the street or something in Tokyo or Kyoto, and you recognize me, and then you tell me, are you even watching my videos or not? I had like somebody say, oh, I recognize you. I was like, domo, do you actually watch the videos? And he's like, no. なんかサムネだけをなんか見たことあるって感じ。It's like, okay, cool. Thanks, but like I've had other people like you come up to me and be like, oh no, like you got native, kikoku shijo, you got peta peta, you got all these levels, I'm watching this, I think this, and it just gives me like tangible feedback, and that feedback is crucial if I'm going to make better videos for you, So, all said and done, I think we're coming full circle, and I think it's been a good little chat. And it's interesting because like you guys right there didn't really care. Like people were like, oh, I don't want to hear Kai Senpai talk about being in Japan. Well, fine, I won't talk about that. But what we will talk about, hopefully, is what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to study? What are you going to listen to? What's your plan? And if you guys don't have such a plan, or you don't know exactly what you want to do or how you're going to study, I did post that link up there. Take a look at both. I would say 3ステップ学習法一応見た方がいいと思うんだよね。だって基本的の俺の教え方とかさ、そういう勉強方法に関していろいろもう説明してるから、どうぞそっちの方ご覧くださいね。それでもし海先輩と一緒におしゃべりしたかったら、その悟りの方に登録してくださいね。悟りの方が面白いと思うんですけれども、日曜日か、日本の日曜日に、こうやってライブストリームで、君と話すのね、英語で。普通に英語で話す。Like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, like, a student or something. Whatever. We're going to have like a normal conversation. And then, ライブストリーム終わってから、その動画を、レビューするね、俺。それで、そのレビュー動画を、君に、シェアするね。英会話の悟りというんですけれども、it's like one of the best ways to learn, because it's like a mirror, and like seeing your own self speaking is such a shock to the system because most people don't do it. I like, unfortunately, listen to myself way too much, and I hate it, to be honest. Like, I just, it's too much of my voice, to be honest. But most people never hear their own voice, you know? And so they just don't have any kind of like consciousness about how they actually sound. And going through that experience, like a process, is really one of the most educational lessons that I could possibly provide to anybody. Because kind of like all of these subconscious mistakes that were made because instead of listening, you were reading, you know? Instead of mimicking, you were writing, you know? So, and then when you polished, but you polished by writing over and over again, or you polished by like reading over and over again, right? You weren't polishing the sounds. So then you go to conversation and it's like, 通じない。聞き取れない。じゃあ、もっと勉強しよう。And then you read again. And then you like write again. And then, so it's just like a never-ending cycle of misery because you're never getting the real feedback other than like, wow, 通じてないけど聞き取りにくいとか、じゃあ学校に戻りましょう。で、学校に戻ると、なんか教育英語弁しか勉強しない。で、教科書どうぞみたいな学校も結構あるから、なんかもう、なんだろうね。Like this、これはね、なんか生きてる教科書を一緒に作りましょうよ。ね。君の単語を作りましょうよ。ね。実際現実で使える単語を作りましょうね。で、成田先生、申し訳ないんですけれども、こういう単語が彼の日常なの。頑張れって感じだよね。まあ、科学者やから、アルゴリズムって言わないと食えないよ。まあ、彼が食ってるから大丈夫じゃないね。イェールのプロフェッサーってすごいよね。でも、まあ、彼の教科書は、まあ、こういうふうに生きてますね。Our like just little basic stuff, right? But for him, this is like the most personal textbook possible ね。だから君も英会話の悟りの経験したらさ、同じようにこういう生きてる教科書を、差し上げますね。それでもう鏡よりもう勉強になるって感じですね。だって鏡ってもうね、見て、でも音だから鏡がないよね。だから結局音の鏡ってやっぱりあれじゃん。録音ね。で、毎日鏡で自分の顔を髪の毛とか顔をなんか綺麗にするじゃん。同じように自分の英語を綺麗にしたかったらね、鏡より録音だね。違うか。で、自分の声を録音したことなかったらね、あんまりしたことない？じゃあやるべきだと思うよ。Like, seriously, it's embarrassing for sure. Like, I'm totally embarrassed right now. That's why I got a haircut, because it's less embarrassing when I get a haircut. But still, like, it's not easy coming onto the internet and going blah, 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 right? I have to, be strong and speak the truth as much as I can. And as long as I speak the truth, then everything should be fine. And if anybody has any debate if I'm speaking the truth or not, you're welcome to ask a question. And then, of course, there's going to be people that leave a comment. And after a while, those comments are like, okay, like literally, we can talk about my Japanese in another conversation if you really want to get down to it, because like a lot of people are like, well, your Japanese like sucks, and it's like, well, yeah, but we're talking about English. So if you're going to talk about my Japanese, one, you're comparing me to native speakers, and that's how you've determined my Japanese isn't so good, right? So it's the same, right? So we're all on the same page there, right? And then two, unless somebody tells me exactly what my mistakes are, how the fuck can I get better? So, you know, like, let's think about this logically. And it's like, hey, if I'm saying anything that appears to be untrue or is like misleading or something, but you know, please. And that's the other thing too. It's like, oh, like Kai Senpai is just choosing American English, or only he thinks only American English exists. It's like, what fucking planet do you think I'm from? Like, of course I know there's other Englishes. I know that. I doubt you do though. And so that's what I'm saying, is that there's all of these different ways to pronounce the words. And the 教育英語弁の喋り方、あんまり使わないよ。Like, just trying to be real, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's like, if you guys want to learn like textbook English, go ahead, read a textbook, right? Sound like Narita professor, right? Professor Narita. 逆にNarita professor でNarita 先生言おうとしたから。Anyway, or you guys can get like a living textbook like this, and then have a conversation with me, and then you get that feedback to your like speaking, and then you can like decide to improve it, you know? Like, seriously, like my beard, right? Like, it was getting too long right here, and like, so I improved it, right? So I cut it. In the same way, you could just take any word on this like this thing here, and we can like fix it, cut it, make it better. Like, this is literally how you get better. So that's why I shared the link. If you guys want to click that link, go ahead, click it, and 一緒に勉強しましょう. Because seriously, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, I can't believe there was a girl studying English in Kyoto at Starbucks, and she was doing pronunciation, but she had a book, and she was like reading and writing, and I was like, hey, just curious, you studying English? She's like, yeah, pronunciation's so hard. And I'm like, well, to be honest, as long as you read English like that and like write while you're practicing, you're never going to get better. So maybe you shouldn't do that. 違うか。So like, seriously though, like, the 勉強方法ね、変えないと上達しないからね。で、今やってる勉強方法が良くないと思うよね。ほとんどの人ね。今でもね、2025年ね。渡辺直美の英語もなんかって感じだよね。ニューヨーク住んでるのに、なんか高校生みたいな喋り方してんのみたいな。なんかあれって感じ？あれやったことないの？なんか聞いてモノマネして、で特にそのモノマネできてなくてね、なんかだって見た目をモノマネするじゃない？レディー・ガーがね。だからそれちょっと面白かったと思うんだけどね。But anyway, like, this is the way, no matter who you are ね。渡辺直美でも、成田、先生でも、you gotta listen, you gotta mimic, and then you gotta polish, right? And then ほとんどの日本人が磨くときは、まあ書いたり読んだりするからあかん。で、会話すると、なんだろう、ちょっと英会話先生みたいな人、Hey, hi Joji, how are you doing? Please have a seat. What did you do this week? Very good. Open your textbook to page 41. 違うか。ね、俺、あれもやったことあるよ。 ガバの英会話学校の、教科書のあれやったんですよ。アディオブックね。で、それやりながら、まあ、作るのが楽しかったよね。でも、なんだろうね。They said, please speak slowly and naturally, kind of like this. And then I said, but nobody talks like this. And they said, do it anyway. We're paying you. And so I did it because they were paying me. But I literally felt like, oh my God, I have just done something unethical. Like, I literally felt like I was like I sold out, you know? And that's why I created my course, I think, because I was like, oh, you got like nobody has made this course, you know? Like the course that I made was like, what are you going to do? The 省略パターンね because like nobody knew it, you know? Like I'd go around and be like, hey, so what are you going to do today? And people were like, huh? 今英語なのみたいなね。そういう反応ばっかりだったから、今日何すんのって聞き取れないのって、いや、早いよって、いや、早くないよ。これ幼稚園レベル英語ですよって、What are you gonna do today? って。で、みんなそれだけでビビってるから、じゃあちょっと習いましょうかって感じwhat are you? So listen, so what are you gonna do today, right? So what are you gonna do today? And then you gotta say, モノマネして、what are you gonna do today? で、言えなかったら、じゃあそれを磨いてください。What are you gonna do today? で、会話になって、誰かと会話しながら、Hey, so what are you gonna do today? ね。で、また答え聞いて、真似して、磨いて、誰かと会話して、ね。こういうふうに、お勉強すると、絶対お勉強になるからね。本当にこう、上達っていう道、これしかないって感じですね。実は。ね。これじゃないと、他の、なんていう、第二言語の勉強方法を聞きたくないよね。これをずれてったらね。この順番ね。まず1位ね、こう学校に行く前に、こう読む前に、文字学ぶ前に聞かないとね。ABC って全く関係ないよね。英語喋りながら。で、音、本当にスペルできなくても、音聞いて真似するだけだから、What are you gonna do tomorrow? って、何スペル？いや、スペル関係ない。だって、What are you gonna do tomorrow? って、明日何すんのって、just 考えすぎないでね。It's that simple. And so I really think that この磨くのところね、英会話学校とかさ、ほとんどの日本人を騙してると思うよ。だって磨くときはね、書いたり読んだり全く意味ないから、まあメモぐらいね、忘れないように、だからさ、こちらのね、draw with a camera。これね、これはメモなのね、忘れないように書いてたのね。だってありすぎてほんとありすぎてね、成田先生ね。で、忘れそうだったからメモしたのね。でも結局覚えてるのはね、そのスペルじゃなくて、彼がドラッグって言ったの。覚えてるよ、まず。ドラッグ。で、その音そのままはどうだろう。drug っていう発音がするのにね。そう。だからまあ順番ですね。聞いて、モノマネして。で、磨くとき、その文字のスペル磨いてなくて、その音を磨いてるよね。だから、drug ね。で、ファクトいや、fact ね。パラマタもなんかやばかったよね。だって、パラマタって、まあ、これちょっと面白いからやってみましょうね。So, this one was like, so this A, we don't say it. The second A is, ちょっと待って。The second A is a paran. There we go. So parameter. So this part is just parameter. Oh yeah, T が D になりますね。parameter. parameter. parameter. だいぶ違うよね。So anyway, だからスペルよりね、まあ音で見えるよね。こうやって parameter ね、parameter。Anyway, まあなんだっけ、科学者だったら parameter という単語を使うからどうぞ使ってくださいね。だからまあ今成田先生の動画が面白かったかどうか分かりませんね。科学的な単語ばっかり使っとったから俺にもちょっとレベル高すぎたよね。でもまあやっぱり日常的な単語も入ってたからね。まあスピリットって、まあスピリットってなんだろうね。全然違うよね。スピリット、スピリット。ね。And so こうやって I can explain everything, but you know, I think that this was a good enough lesson, I think, for everybody that watched. Because to get into the details of like your personal English, I would need to talk to you personally, you know? And so truly, Narita Sensei has one of the best lessons on the planet right now because, I mean, if he wanted me to like read every single word here, be like drug, fact, spirit, more, じゃなくて more, right? Health, answer, that's それちょっとびっくりしましたよね. Answer, parameter, right? If he wants me to read all of them, I could, I would, and I should. Light, it's not light, it's right. Oh yeah, coin toss. That was I didn't understand what he said, and I was like, oh yeah. So the that's not a o, it's a coin toss. Tati tute to no ta. Monetary was kind of weird too. Nominal, I think was another word, nominal. So anyway, there, I said it. I kind of like I polished it for you, if that makes any sense, right? And then now that these words are polished, right, fact, then use them in a conversation. And so it is a fact that in American English, that is fact. And if you say fact, you're fucked. I mean, you could be. So, you know, be careful. Don't get fucked. State the facts. 違うか. All right, so I think we've come full circle on this, and it was a beautiful lesson, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I really do appreciate your time. And if you want to learn more, seriously, just go click the link. I think the link is like right here, and it is pinned, so you can check it and sign up and get all the other information that I have, because I have a lot of information, and check it out. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And if you do have the time, leave a comment and be like, hey, this video was stupid, never do it again. Or leave a comment and says, this video was great, you should do more of it. I appreciate your time, and I will talk to you soon. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye. 혼자. Stop recording. Stop.